You're going to sign this tonight, Claire. Let's not make a scene. My husband slid the craft envelope across the white tablecloth, right past the untouched bread basket, right in front of his mother's approving smile. The restaurant hummed with conversation around us, oblivious to the fact that my 18-year marriage was being executed between the appetizer and the main course. My name is Claire, and I am 41 years old. That night in Lyon, at a starred restaurant where my husband, Guillaume, had just been celebrated as a new chief executive officer of Groupe Lépine, he learned exactly how much my loyalty was worth to the man he had built my life around. The answer, apparently, was nothing at all. He looked at the envelope, then at Guillaume, then at his parents seated across from his mother, Dominique, who pearled a satisfied expression that made my stomach turn. His father, Valentin, studied his wine glass a two-bit contain something fascinating. Neither of them seemed surprised by what was happening. This had been planned, coordinated, and he was clearly the last person to know about any of it. The company is entering a new phase, Guillaume continued, adjusting his silk tie with the casual confidence of a man who believed he held all the cards. He need to present a certain image now. You understand how these things work. He understood more than he could possibly imagine. He understood that the woman sitting beside him at the office lately one he thought he did not know about younger, blonde, and far more useful for the magazine profile he was already dreaming about giving. He understood that 18 years of managing his calendar, smoothing over his explosive temper with board members, and sacrificing my own career a financial consultant to support his relentless climb meant absolutely nothing when weighed against his towering ambition. But he also understood something Guillaume had clearly forgotten in his arrogance. He understood exactly how intertwined my work was with his success, how many critical documents bore my signature, and how many major decisions had been made jointly because the company's lawyers had insisted on it during those early struggling years when Groupe Lépine was hemorrhaging money and my financial expertise was the only thing keeping them afloat. You want me to sign divorce papers at your promotion dinner? He said slowly, deliberately, making sure my voice carried just enough for the nearby to catch a word or two, in front of your parents tonight. Keep your voice down, he said, his jaw tightening with irritation. He picked up the envelope, opened it carefully, and began reading through the document. The terms were laudable, almost insulting in their inadequacy. He was offering me the house, which still had a substantial mortgage that he had been paying for with my own savings, and a settlement that would barely cover 2 years of modest living. In exchange, he was supposed to walk away quietly from everything we had built together, including the considerable assets he clearly assumed he knew nothing about. There's a pen in there, Dominique said helpfully, her voice dripping with false sweetness. We thought you might want to just get it over with quickly. He looked at her. This woman had eaten Christmas Eve dinner at my table for 18 consecutive years. He had nursed her through a difficult surgery when Guillaume was too consumed with quarterly report to visit the hospital. He had remembered every single birthday, every anniversary, every food preference she had ever mentioned. Thank you, Dominique, he said, and he genuinely meant it. She had just shown me exactly who she truly was after all these years. He found the pen. He signed every page carefully, methodically, while Guillaume watched with barely concealed relief washing over his feature. His shoulder relaxed visibly. His father finally looked up from his wine glass. The palpable tension around the table dissolved into something that felt almost like premature celebration. When he finished signing, he stacked the papers neatly and handed them back to Guillaume. Then he leaned in close. Close enough that only he could hear me. And he whispered 7 words that would haunt him for the month to come. This is going to cost you more than you think. He looked. Actually looked out loud at me. Claire, please. You've never had a head for business. That is why he handled everything important. He smiled, gathered my purse, and walked out of that restaurant without looking back once. The valet brought my car around quickly, and he drove home through the Lyon night, past the lively bar in Vieux-Lyon, past the tourists stumbling along the cobblestone, past the entire life he had known for nearly 2 decades. Guillaume thought he had just freed himself from an inconvenient marriage. He had absolutely no idea that he had just freed me to destroy him completely. The house was dark and silent when he arrived home. He walked through the rooms we had shared for so many years, touching nothing, feeling nothing except a strange crystalline clarity that had been building inside me for months perhaps even years, if he was being completely honest with himself. The truth was, he had suspected this moment was coming for quite some time. Guillaume had grown increasingly distant over the past year, dismissive of my opinion, treating me like furniture and had simply tired of looking at. The late night at the office, the whispered phone calls he took in other rooms, the way I slid past me at company events that he had become invisible to him. He had prepared for this, not consciously, not with any specific plan in mind, but with the survival instinct of a woman who had spent her entire professional life analyzing risk and protecting assets from unforeseen disaster. He had copy of document Guillaume had long forgotten existed. He had record of transactions and assumed were buried so deep no one would ever find them. He had 18 years of intimate knowledge about Groupe Lépine Ciné workings knowledge that Guillaume had never properly valued because he had never genuinely understood its true worth. Tomorrow morning, he would begin the careful, methodical work of turning that knowledge into leverage. Tonight, he simply sat in the darkness of my living room and let myself feel the full crushing weight of what had happened. My husband had humiliated me publicly and deliberately, believing he was too shocked or too heartbroken or too financially ignorant to respond effectively. HIS entire family had participated eagerly in my degradation, confident that he would fade away quietly like an embarrassing footnote in Guillaume's glorious success story. They were all about to learn that underestimating me was the most expensive mistake any of them had ever made. The morning after the dinner, he walked before dawn and made coffee in a kitchen that suddenly felt large, entier, and entirely mean for the first time. Guillaume had texted at some point during the night, a message he did not bother reading. Whatever he had to say could wait indefinitely. He had far more important work to do. For the next several hours, he sat at my desk in the home office he had converted from a spare bedroom years ago, surrounded by files he had carefully accumulated through our marriage. Most people would have looked at this paperwork and seen ordinary document, just tax returns and corporate filing and meeting minutes from countless board sessions. He saw something else entirely. He saw the entire foundation of Guillaume's career barré before me, and he saw how much of that foundation rested on decisions that he had made and work that he had done. When Guillaume and he first met, he was working as a financial consultant for a prestigious firm that specialized in restructuring struggling company. Groupe Lépine was one of my most challenging clients, a family-owned operation that had been hemorrhaging money for years under the incompetent mismanagement of ETS Engine Fundé. Guillaume was the Fundé's ambitious nephew, charming on the surface and utterly unqualified for the executive role and had been handed through pure nepotism. He was also, at that time, completely and desperately dependent on my guidance to keep the company from collapsing entirely. Our relationship began a strictly professional collaboration. He needed someone who could navigate the complex labyrinth of crushing debt and failing contract that threatened to destroy Groupe Lépine completely. He needed a challenge, something substantial to prove my worth in an industry that rarely gave women proper credit for their expertise. We worked together intensively for 2 years before our partnership became personal. And during that time, he learned absolutely everything there was to know about Groupe Lépine's finance, ETS hidden vulnerability, and ETS untapped potential. When we married, Guillaume convinced me to leave my firm and work exclusively with Groupe Lépine. He framed it romantically a true partnership, a chance to build something meaningful together. What he actually wanted, he now realized, was my expertise without the considerable expense of paying consultant fee. He was young enough and in love enough to agree without questioning his motive. For the next 6 years, he managed Groupe Lépine's entire financial strategy from behind the scene. He negotiated with hostile creditor when the company was struggling through difficult quarter. He identified promising acquisition target that eventually tripled our market share. He structured complex deals that Guillaume took full credit for presenting to the board his own brilliant ideas. And when the lawyers required joint signature on certain documents, when they insisted that major decisions carry both our names because my role was too central to the company's operation to ignore, he signed without giving it a second thought. Those signatures were about to become very important indeed. The divorce papers Guillaume had prepared were based entirely on the assumption that he had no legitimate claim to anything beyond what he magnanimously chose to give me. E had read a lawyer who specialized in protecting wealthy clients from their less financially sophisticated spouse. E had hidden assets in account and believed he could never access or even discover. E had underestimated me so completely and thoroughly that he had not even bothered to disguise his ut content for my intelligence. But he had been watching carefully for years. He had been watching and waiting and documenting everything. Not because he specifically expected this particular betrayal, but because he was a financial consultant by training, and un grain caution was simply how my mind naturally worked. He had copy of everything important. Every significant contract, every suspicious transfer, every major decision that bore my signature alongside. He had evidence of the offshore account he thought were completely secret. He had record of the excessive compensation he had denied me while paying himself bonus that would make most people less head spin. He spent that entire first day organizing my documentation, creating a comprehensive timeline of our financial partnership that would be impossible for any court to ignore or dismiss. Guillaume thought he was divorcing a simple housewife who had lost touch with her professional skill over the years. He was about to discover that he was actually divorcing a forensic accountant who knew exactly where every single euro was buried. The news of her divorce spread quickly through Lyon's business community. The city's professional circle were small enough that gossip traveled at lightning speed, and Guillaume had made enough enemy over the years that plenty of people were genuinely happy to discuss his personal failure over expensive lunch. He heard the whisper through friends who still cared enough to call and check on me. Guillaume was telling everyone that we had simply grown apart, that the demand of his new position required certain sacrifices, that he had graciously agreed to step aside for the good of his career. He was also, according to one particularly well-informed source, already appearing in public with a woman named Berenice, who worked in Groupe Lépinès marketing department. She was 28 years old, eager to please, and apparently convinced that she had secured her entire future by attaching herself to the company's powerful news CEO. He felt nothing when he heard this news. Not jealousy, not envy, not even the bitter satisfaction he might have expected to feel. Berenice was completely irrelevant to what he was planning. Guillaume could parade 100 young women through Lyon's finest restaurant if that made him happy. It would not change what was inevitably coming for him. What he felt instead was pure, focused determination. The kind of crystalline clarity that comes when you finally see a situation for exactly what it truly is without the obscuring fog of hope or fear or misplaced loyalty. Guillaume had thrown away her marriage because he believed he had nothing left to offer him. He was profoundly wrong about that, but not in the way he expected. He had plenty to offer. He just had absolutely no intention of letting him benefit from any of it ever again. The house felt completely different now that he saw it clearly. For years, it had been nothing more than a showcase for Guillaume's ego, decorated by expensive designer and had chosen, filled with furniture meant primarily to impress important visitors. Now it felt like an abandoned stage set for a play that had finally ended ETS long run. He walked through the rooms with entirely new eyes, carefully cataloging what was legitimately mean, what was technically worse, and what Guillaume had desperately tried to hide from the division of assets. In his study, behind a row of impressive business books that Guillaume had never actually bought to read, he found the document he was looking for, contract from the early years of Groupe Lépinès restructuring when my signature was legally required on every major decision, record of intellectual property he had helped develop, strategic framework that still formed the core foundation of the company's ongoing success, and evidence of the informal partnership that had never been properly compensated because Guillaume had convinced me that we were building something meaningful together. We were building something together, all right? He just never intended to share any of it fairly. He photographed everything meticulously, made multiple digital copies, and stored them in secure location Guillaume would never think to look. Then he sat down and began drafting a detailed letter to the lawyer he had quietly written 3 months earlier, when he first strongly suspected that Guillaume's emotional distance was about more than just work stress. My lawyer's name was Theo, and he was one of the sharpest divorce attorneys practicing in the Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region. He specialized in cases where powerful men dramatically underestimated their partner, and he had been patiently waiting for my call. The promotion dinner replayed in my mind constantly during those first difficult weeks. Note the moment Guillaume handed me the papers, which had been brutal enough on ETS own, but the moment immediately before. The way's parents had carefully positioned themselves, ready to witness what they clearly expected to be my complete humiliation. The way Guillaume had deliberately timed his announcement for maximum psychological impact right after the toast to his new position, right when he was supposed to be celebrating alongside my supportive wife. He had wanted an audience for my destruction. He had wanted me to feel small and powerless, to understand viscerally that he was being permanently discarded at the absolute peak of his professional triumph. The divorce papers were not just a legal document, but a carefully orchestrated statement, a theatrical performance designed to demonstrate his complete power over our shared history. What Guillaume utterly failed to understand was that he had been performing for 18 long years. Performing the role of the supportive wife who stayed contentedly in the background, who later husband takes all credit for her work, who smiled graciously at corporate function while her substantial contributions were systematically ignored. He was exceptionally good at performing. He was so convincing that Guillaume had genuinely forgotten there was anything real beneath the surface. The night of that dinner, when he leaned in to whisper my warning, he saw something flicker briefly in his eyes. Confusion mostly. He could not possibly imagine what he might possess that could threaten him. He had spent so many years dismissing my intelligence that he had genuinely forgotten he possessed any worth respecting. But there was something else visible, too, just for a fleeting moment. A shadow of doubt. A question that he quickly pushed away before it could fully form in his conscious mind. Fourmont latte, that question would have a devastating answer, and Guillaume would finally understand exactly what he had so carelessly thrown away. In the weeks that followed the dinner, Guillaume moved forward with the supreme confidence of a man who believed all his problems were permanently solved. He gave polished interview to Business Magazine. He appeared at industry conference a group Lépinès bold new visionary leader. He moved into a luxury apartment downtown and began the systematic process of erasing me from his public narrative entirely. Meanwhile, he was quietly building my case with the patience of a spider constructing an elaborate web. Theo had connected me with a forensic accounting firm that specialized in uncovering hidden assets and financial manipulation. Their investigators were thorough, methodical, and completely ruthless in their pursuit of the truth. Within 3 weeks, they found 3 offshore accounts that Guillaume had opened without my knowledge, using company funds that should have been properly disclosed to the board of directors. They found substantial evidence that he had systematically underreported group Lépinès profit during our marriage, specifically to reduce what might be considered shared marital assets. They found a disturbing pattern of financial manipulation that went back years. All of it carefully designed to ensure that he would walk away with a little a possible if we ever divorced. What they also found, and this was the discovery that changed absolutely everything, was that Guillaume had used my signature on several key documents to authorize major decisions that the board had never officially approved. He had needed my authorization because he was listed as a partner in certain subsidiary agreements, although from the early days when my involvement was too central to the company's operation to ignore entirely. He had presented this decision at took they had proper corporate backing when, in reality, they were based solely on the authority my position gave him. This was not just a divorce matter anymore. This was potential corporate fraud with serious legal consequences. He sat with Theo in his office overlooking Lyon's skyline, carefully reviewing the document his team had painstakingly compiled. The scope of what Guillaume had done was absolutely staggering. He had built his entire meteoric rise on a foundation of half-truth and unauthorized action, and he had cynically used my name and my signature to make it all appear legitimate. You understand what this means, Theo said, tapping his pen thoughtfully against his polished desk. If we pursue this aggressively, we are not just talking about improving your divorce settlement. We are talking about his position at the company, his professional reputation, possibly even criminal charge. He looked out the window at the city where he had spent my entire adult life supporting a man who saw me as nothing more than a useful tool to be discarded when no longer needed. He thought about 18 years of sacrifice, of stepping as it so Guillaume could shine, of believing that we were genuine partners, even I secretly planned to throw me away. He understand completely, he said, and he want to pursue all of it. Theo nodded slowly, but he was not finished delivering difficult news. There's something else you should know. We found communication between Guillaume and his lawyer from before the divorce papers were served. They discussed the timing extensively. They specifically chose that dine because they believed public humiliation would make you too emotional to think clearly. They wanted you to sign immediately before you could consult anyone who might advise you differently. The manipulation went even deeper than he had initially realized. Guillaume had not just wanted me out of his life conveniently. He had wanted to crush me completely, to leave me so psychologically shattered that he would accept whatever crumb and condescendingly offered. He had deliberately turned our final dinner together into an elaborate trap, a carefully orchestrated ambush designed to strip me of everything he had legitimately earned. And he had done it in front of his parents, who had participated willingly and enthusiastically because they had never truly seen me a family. He was just the useful woman who had helped her son success, now to be disposed of efficiently. That was the moment when my anger finally crystallized into something cold and clear and absolutely unshakable. He had spent weeks feeling numb, then determined, then focused on the practical details. Now he felt something entirely new. He felt certainty absolute, unwavering certainty that Guillaume would regret every single decision he had made. The documents we had gathered were explosive enough to destroy him completely. But he wanted more than simple destruction. He wanted him to understand exactly what he had lost and exactly who had taken it from him. I need to ask you something important, he said to Theo. Can we time this strategically? Can we wait until he is at his most comfortable, his most confident, and then let everything come out at once? Theo studied me carefully for a long moment. That is a risky strategy. The longer we wait, the more time he has to potentially cover his tracks. He won't cover them, he said with complete confidence. He doesn't think there's anything to cover. He thinks he signed those papers and disappeared obediently. He thinks he has already won. And you want him to keep thinking that until it's far too late for him to do anything about it. You want him to feel exactly what he felt at that dinner. Blindsided, humiliated, watching everything he built collapse while people who should have protected him just sit there and stare. Theo leaned back in his leather chair, a slight smile crossing his face. He can definitely work with that. We spent the next hour carefully planning a detailed timeline. Guillaume would have 3 more months of uninterrupted triumph, 3 more months of believing that he had cleanly escaped the consequence of his action. He would settle comfortably into his new role as CEO, enjoy his new relationship with his young girlfriend, and assume that the minor inconvenience of his divorce was safely and permanently behind him. And then, just when he felt most secure and untouchable, everything would systematically unravel. Guillaume reached out unexpectedly 2 months after the dinner, claiming he wanted to discuss some minor details about the house and the remaining logistics of our separation. He knew immediately that this was not actually about the house at all. His voice had a nervous edge that he had learned to recognize instantly over 18 years of marriage. Something was bothering him, and he was fishing for information. I've already spoken with the lawyers about everything, he said calmly and pleasantly. There's nothing left to discuss between us. Claire, please, can we just meet for coffee? I feel like we ended things badly, and I'd like to clear the air. He nearly laughed out loud. Ended things badly? A Tug serving divorce papers at his promotion dinner while his parents watched approvingly was simply a minor lapse in social etiquette. I don't think that is a good idea, Guillaume. I just want to make sure you're okay. I've heard some things lately. People saying you've been meeting with accountant, looking into company record. I want to make sure you're not doing anything you'll regret. So, that was it. Word had clearly reached him that he was not being the key, compliant ex-wife he had expected me to be. Someone in his professional network had noticed that he was asking pointed questions, reviewing sensitive documents, gathering information that he had assumed would stay buried forever. I'm just tidying up our shared finance, he said sweetly, keeping my voice perfectly innocent. Making sure everything is in proper order for the final settlement. You understand how important that is. There was a long uncomfortable pause on his end of the line. Claire, whatever you're planning, it's not going to work. You have excellent lawyers. You have substantial resources. You can't hurt me. I'm not trying to hurt you, Guillaume. I'm just protecting my legitimate interest. Isn't that what you always talked me to do? E hung up without saying goodbye. 2 days later, your true friends det had hired additional legal counsel, specialist in corporate defense and asset protection. He was worried, but he did not know specifically what to worry about. He was swinging wildly at Shadow. He let him swing. The weeks passed slowly, each one bringing new revelation from TOS investigative team. The scope of Guillaume's systematic manipulation was absolutely breathtaking when you saw it all lay out clearly. He had methodically used my position and my signature to authorize decision that enriched himself substantially at the company's expense. He had created a paper trail that would be absolutely devastating if examined closely by the right people. And he had done all of it while assuring me that he did not need to worry about the boring details. That he would handle everything important, that he should just trust him completely. He had trusted him. That was my fundamental mistake. He would never make it again. The final piece of our case came together in the third month. TOS investigator had found the communication that proved Guillaume Kniouis' actions were unauthorized and potentially illegal. He had discussed the risk openly with a colleague, joking about how incredibly useful it was to have a wife who signed whatever et puis in front of her without asking too many questions. He had called me his rubber stamp, his silent partner, his insurance policy against scrutiny. Reading those messages felt like being slapped hard across the face. Not because they revealed anything he did not already suspect, but because seeing his content expressed in his own casual word made it impossible to deny the reality of our relationship. He had never truly respected me. He had never genuinely seen me as an equal partner. He was a tool he used and discarded when he found an aware, shiny model. Guillaume was about to learn what happened when tools decided to fight back with everything they had. As the 4-month mark approached, he felt a strange sense of peaceful calm settling over me. Everything was meticulously in place. Theo had briefed the board members who would be most receptive to our evidence. The forensic accountant had prepared a comprehensive presentation that laid out Guillaume's fraud in devastating, irrefutable detail. The divorce court had scheduled a hearing that would coincide perfectly with the board's emergency meeting. Guillaume, meanwhile, was still living contentedly in his fantasy world. He had recently given a glowing interview where he praised his own visionary leadership and spoke optimistically about Groupe Lépinès' bright future under his guidance. He had been photographed at an expensive restaurant with Berenice, both of them smiling radiantly at how they had not a care in the world. He had even sent me a formal thank you note for making the divorce proceedings so civilized and amicable. He kept that note carefully. He planned to frame it someday. The morning of the 4th month, he woke before dawn and watched the sunrise slowly over Lyon. In just a few hours, Guillaume would arrive at Groupe Lépinès Corporate Headquarters for what he believed was a routine board meeting to discuss quarterly projection. Instead, he would find Theo waiting in the conference room with a thick folder of evidence and a formal request for his immediate resignation. Simultaneously, the divorce court would receive our comprehensive supplemental filing documenting the hidden assets, the unauthorized transaction, and the systematic fraud that had underpinned our entire 18-year marriage. By the end of the day, Guillaume's financial picture would look very different from what he had confidently assumed. He dressed carefully that morning, choosing an outfit that projected calm confidence without any hint of aggression or vindictiveness. Theo had advised me to attend the board meeting in person. He wanted the director to see me, to remember the woman whose work and whose name had been cynically exploited to build Guillaume's entire kingdom. The drive to Groupe Lépinès Headquarters took 20 minutes. He spent the time reviewing what he would say if given the opportunity to speak to the board. He had practiced extensively with Theo, refining my word until they were sharp enough to cut without appearing vindictive or emotional. This was business now. Personal feeling had no legitimate place in what was about to happen. When he arrived, Guillaume was already in the building. HIS expensive car was parked in ETS reserved space, the space that used to be reserved for both of us before he decided he was no longer essential to his life or his image. He parked in the visitor low and walked through the main entrance, nodding politely to security guard who still remember me from years of holiday party and corporate events. The boardroom was located on the top floor. He rode the elevator with Theo, neither of us speaking a word. There was nothing left to say. We had prepared exhaustively for this moment for months. Now it was finally time to execute our plan. Guillaume was standing confidently at the head of the long conference table when he walked into the room. His face went completely white. What is she doing here? Your attorney, Theo, asked me to attend, he said calmly, taking a seat at the far end of the table. Apparently, there are some important matters that require my input. The board members were already seated around the table, their expression ranging from curious to deeply concerned. He recognized most of them from years of corporate function where he had stood quietly at Guillaume's side, always present, never properly acknowledged. They were about to learn exactly how much they had overlooked. Theo began his presentation. He watched Guillaume's face intently as the evidence was laid out, document by document, transaction by transaction. He watched Guillaume's confidence erode visibly before my eyes, replaced first by confusion, then by growing panic, then by desperate calculation. I searched frantically for some way to escape what was happening. He tried to interrupt several times with increasingly implausible explanation. He tried to dismiss the finding as a simple misunderstanding that could be easily cleared up. He tried to blame subordinate, blame outdated process, blame anyone and everyone except himself. But the evidence was absolutely overwhelming. His own word condemned him completely. His own signature proved his client, and my signature rest one they had obtained through trust and calculated deception showed exactly how he had systematically exploited our partnership for his personal gain. When Theo finished his presentation, the boardroom was completely silent. Guillaume looked like a man watching his entire world collapse around him in slow motion. Claire, he said finally, his voice cracking with desperation. You don't have to do this. We can work something out privately. I'll give you whatever you want. Just name your price. He looked at him steadily. This man he had loved faithfully for 18 years. This man who had thrown me away publicly because he thought he had nothing left to offer him. He thought about the dinner where he had deliberately humiliated me. The whispered warning he had looked at dismissively. The month he had spent patiently building the case that would destroy everything he valued. You already gave me what he wanted, Guillaume. You gave me the divorce. The board voted unanimously to terminate his employment pending a full independent investigation into his conduct. Guillaume was escorted from the building by security, his personal belonging to be shipped to whatever address he eventually provided. I passed me in the hallway, his face twisted with barely contained rage, he stopped. You'll regret this, he said venomously. I'll make absolutely sure of it. He smiled serenely. I've already had 18 years of regret. This feel like relief. He left. Instead to answer the board's many questions, to provide detailed context for the document they had seen, to begin the complicated process of untangling the mess Guillaume had created through years of deception. It took several hours, but by the end of that long day, Groupe Lépine had a clear plan for moving forward without ETS disgraced for SVO. The divorce court was equally decisive when presented with our evidence. Confronted with comprehensive documentation of hidden assets and fraudulent concealm, the judge threw out Guillaume's original settlement offer completely and ordered a full forensic accounting of all marital property. Theo estimated that he would receive at least 3 times what Guillaume had initially proposed, possibly significant more. Guillaume's carefully constructed world continued to crumble rapidly in the weeks that followed. The investigation expanded well beyond Groupe Lépine's internal matters, revealing additional financial shame that attracted the serious attention of national regulator. His relationship with Berenice ended abruptly and publicly when she realized it was no longer useful to her career ambition. His parents, who had sat so smugly at that dinner table watching my humiliation, stopped returning his increasingly desperate calls when the scandal became public knowledge. He tried to reach me several times, leaving voicemail messages that ranged from threatening to pleading to pathetically desperate. He deleted them all without listening. There was nothing he could say that would change what had happened, and nothing he needed to hear from him ever again. The month that followed brought continued revelation about Guillaume's misconduct. The forensic accountant discovered additional hidden account, additional unauthorized transaction, and additional evidence of the systematic fraud he had perpetrated for years. Each new discovery strengthened my legal position and weakened his. HIS attend to fight back le Gali were unsuccessful. The evidence was simply too overwhelming, too well documented, too thoroughly corroborated by his own word and action. HIS lawyers advised him repeatedly to settle quietly rather than risk a public trial that would expose even more of his wrongdoing. But Guillaume's pride would not allow him to accept defeat gracefully. The final divorce hearing took place on a Tuesday morning, 6 months after the dinner that had started everything. He wore a simple navy dress and sat calmly as the judge reviewed the evidence and delivered a ruling. Guillaume sat across the courtroom looking diminished and exhausted, a shadow of the confident man who had slid those papers across the restaurant table. The judge awarded me the house free and clear of any mortgage. She awarded me a substantial portion of the retirement account he had tried desperately to hide. She awarded me compensation for years of work that had never been properly acknowledged or compensated. And she ordered Guillaume to pay my legal fee in full, citing his bad faith conduct through the proceeding. When the hearing ended, Guillaume tried one last time to speak with me. Claire, please, can we talk? Just 5 minutes. He need to explain. He looked at him. Really looked at him for perhaps the first time since that dinner. He seemed smaller somehow, less imposing, less significant. The man who had once commanded boardroom and intimidated competitor now stood before me looking broken and defeated. There's nothing to explain, Guillaume. You made your choice very clearly. Now you get to live with the consequence. He walked out of that courtroom and into the bright morning sunlight, feeling lighter than he had in years. The weight of 18 years of subordination, of diminishment, of being treated as less than he was, lifted from my shoulder completely. Théo me outside on the courthouse step. Congratulations. You got everything you asked for and more. He got what he deserved, he corrected him. What he should have demanded years ago. He smiled and shook my hand firmly. What are you going to do now? He thought about the question seriously. For 18 years, my life had been organized around Guillaume's need, Guillaume's care, Guillaume's ambition. Now, for the first time since he was 23 years old, he was completely free to determine my own path. I'm going to rebuild my consulting practice, he said. I'm going to help other companies avoid the kind of financial disaster he spent years preventing at Groupe Lépine, and I'm going to do it under my own name this time. Theo nodded approvingly. You'll be incredibly successful. You have the skill and the experience. He always had them, he said quietly. He just let someone convince me they weren't valuable. The year that followed my divorce was transformative in a way he could never have anticipated. He reopened my consulting practice, working from a small office downtown that he decorated exactly the way he wanted, with furniture he chose myself and artwork that actually meant something to me. Theo referred several clients my way initially, and word spread quickly about the financial consultant who had taken down one of Lyon's most prominent executives. My reputation grew not because of the scandal, took that certainly attracted initial attention, but because he was genuinely excellent at my work. He had spent 18 years honing my skill, analyzing complex financial situations, developing strategy that created real value. The difference now was that he received proper credit for my contribution. Guillaume's legal trouble continued to mount through that year. The regulatory investigation resulted in significant fine and a permanent ban from serving an officer in any publicly traded company. HIS professional reputation in Lyon's business community was thoroughly destroyed, and the last year, he had moved to the Côte d'Azur to escape the constant reminder of his spectacular failure. HIS parents never apologized for their role in my humiliation. But when he ran into Dominique at a grocery store 6 months later, she could not meet my eyes and hurried away without speaking a word. Berenice landed on her feet, a people like her usually do. She found another rising executive to attach herself to, another man who believed that youth and flattery were adequate substitute for genuine substance. He wished her well, sincerely. She had never been my real enemy. She was just a symptom of Guillaume's deeper failure as a human being. The house, once a showcase for Guillaume's outsized ego, became truly mean for the first time. He redecorated it completely in my own style, filled it with things he actually cared about, turned it into a space that reflected who he genuinely was rather than who he had been expected to be. Some night he sat on the back porch with a glass of wine and thought about the long journey that had brought me to this peaceful place. Signing those divorce papers had felt like surrender at the time. It was actually liberation in disguise. Guillaume had expected me to crumble when he served me those papers so publicly. He had expected tears, begging, the satisfying collapse of a woman who could not possibly survive without him. Instead, he had given him exactly what he asked for. And then he had shown him precisely what that request would ultimately cost him. 4 months of patient preparation, 4 months of strategic planning, 4 months of letting him believe he had already won. While he methodically built the case that would take everything from him, he thought often about that whispered warning at the dinner table, the 7 words he had looked at so dismissively. This is going to cost you more than you think. He understood now. He understood completely. My consulting practice grew steadily through that first year, then more rapidly in the second. He hired 2 associates, then 5, then opened a second office in Marseille. Company sought me out specifically because of my reputation for thoroughness, for finding problem other missed, for protecting organization from the kind of internal fraud that had nearly destroyed Groupe Lépine. The irony was not lost on me. Guillaume's betrayal had become the foundation of my success. His cruelty had liberated me to become the professional he should have been all along. He received a letter from Guillaume about a year after the divorce was finalized. He had written it by hand, several pages of cramped handwriting that alternated between self-pity and blame. He claimed that he had destroyed him unfairly, that he had only been trying to provide for his family, that he had overacted to a simple misunderstanding. He read the letter once, then burned it without responding. He still did not understand what he had done. He probably never would. Some people asked me during those early months whether he felt guilty about what had happened to Guillaume, whether he regretted the severity of the consequences he faced, whether he thought he had gone too far in pursuing justice so relentlessly. He always gave the same answer. He did not destroy Guillaume. He simply refused to let him destroy me. Every consequence he faced was the direct result of choice he made, fraud he committed, trust he betrayed. He did not create the evidence that brought him down. He simply made sure the right people saw it. The distinction mattered to me. He was not a vindictive person by nature. He had not spent 18 years plotting revenge, waiting for the opportunity to strike. He had spent 18 years being a loyal partner, only to discover that my loyalty meant nothing to the man he had given everything to. What he did after the divorce was not revenge. It was self-defense. It was reclaiming what had been taken from me. It was refusing to accept the narrative Guillaume tried to impose, the story where he was the forgettable footnote and he was the hero. The truth was more complicated and ultimately more satisfying. Guillaume was never the hero of anything. He was a man who built his success on the work of others, who took credit for achievements that were noticed, who discarded people when they were no longer useful to him. His downfall was not caused by my action. It was caused by his own corruption. Finally exposed to the light, he simply turned on the light. Theo and he remained friends after the case concluded. He referred clients to me regularly, and he occasionally consulted on complex divorce cases where financial fraud was suspected. We had lunch together every few months, comparing notes on the various way powerful people tried to hide their misconduct. You know, he said during one of these lunch about 2 years after my divorce, Guillaume's case is still being taught in law schools as an example of how not to handle a divorce. He looked. He hoped they mention my contribution. Oh, they do. You held up a model of strategic patience. The woman who let her husband think he won, then systematically dismantled his entire life. That makes me sound more calculating than he was. You were exactly as calculating as you needed to be. That is why you won. Theo was right in a way. He had been calculating during those 4 months. He had analyzed the situation, identified the vulnerability, developed a strategy, and executed it precisely. Those were skills he had honed over decades of professional practice. Guillaume just never realized he would use them against him. He had underestimated me. That was his fundamental error, the mistake that cost him everything. The business community in Lyon eventually moved on from the scandal, a business community always do. New executive rose, new scandal emerged, new stories capture attention. Guillaume Beckham a cautionary tell, a name invoked when discussing corporate governance failure or the danger of unchecked ambition. I became something else entirely. I became a success story in my own right, built on my own merit, recognized for my own contribution. When he spoke at industry conference, people listened, not because of my connection to Guillaume, but because of my expertise. When he was profiled in business magazine, the focus was on my insight and my accomplishment, not on the dramatic circumstance of my divorce. He had finally stepped completely out of Guillaume's shadow. The light suited me. Some team late at night, he still thought about that dinner. Not with pain anymore, not with anger, but with a kind of detached curiosity. He wondered what Guillaume had expected to happen. Whether he truly believed he would simply accept his term and disappear, whether he ever considered, even for a moment, that he might fight back. He suspected the answer was no. He had spent so many years seeing me an extension of himself, a supporting character in his story, that he had forgotten he had my own agency, my own intelligence, my own capacity for strategic thinking. He forgot that he was the one who had saved Groupe Lépine in the first place, who had built the financial strategy that made his success possible, who had signed the document that gave him the authority and eventually abused. He forgot that everything he had helped him build. And that meant he knew exactly how to take it apart. The consequence Guillaume faced extended far beyond the professional realm. His personal life crumbled completely after the divorce. The friends who had celebrated his CEO appointment quietly distanced themselves when the scandal broke. The professional network he had cultivated for years evaporated almost overnight when word spread about his misconduct. His parents, who had been so eager to witness my humiliation, found themselves social pariah in the Lyon circle they had spent decades trying to impress. He heard through mutual acquaintance that they had eventually moved away a well, unable to endure the whispered judgment of former friends and neighbors. Guillaume himself bounced between failed business ventures and increasingly desperate shame to rebuild his reputation, each attempt ending in furte embarrassment. The last credible information he received placed him in a small apartment in Toulon, working as a consultant for a company that had no idea about his past and paying off the substantial debt his legal defense had accumulated. Looking back on my revenge journey, he realized it was never really about vengeance at all, it was about truth. It was about ensuring that the story of our marriage, of my contribution, of my worth, was finally told accurately after years of deliberate distortion. Guillaume had spent 18 years rewriting our shared history to make himself the sole hero. He simply made certain the real version came out in the end. I looked toward my future, building my practice, mentoring young consultants, living a life of my own design. He understood that the best revenge was not his downfall, but my own rise. Built finally and completely on my own term.